Microphone check 1 2. Microphone check 1 to the 2. Okay. Alright, looks like we got good levels here and everything. Thank you for purchasing this premium content. I'll point you to the right side of the screen where I have my social media networks information. I'm on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. So you want to know how to make an instrumental from MPC Essentials. I'm about to make that very plain, make it very simple, and I do actually have an itinerary that I'll be following. I'll show you how to load a kit. I'll show you how to set the tempo. I'll show you how to set up your bars for your sequence and your beat. I'll explain the next sequence section. I'll explain song mode, exporting song mode, or exporting from song mode. I'll explain how to edit your beat while you're making it. I'll show you how to sequence that beat into song mode. And in the export section, I'll explain, bit rate and MP3 options and things like that. And then we'll conclude the video. So I'll stay on track as much as I possibly can, and I hope that this information will prove excellent for you in your entrepreneurial endeavors. I want to congratulate you for actually investing into your craft and into your content. There's something different about producers who actually take the time out to put money into their craft, and you get a lot different outcome than you do when you're trying to get everything for free. And there's nothing wrong with getting things for free. I think that when you pay for things, you appreciate them a little bit more. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started with loading a kit. I'm going to give you guys a view into my process. I don't always know exactly what I'm gonna do from the start, and so I decided that I would take that same route with this tutorial. I'm making this beat totally from scratch. I'm gonna use drum kits, and hopefully things will turn out great. If they don't turn out great, then that'll be another story. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is go into my folder section. You may want to start here in the Elements of Dystopia house or UK dance area. Actually, I think I will pull a kick from the dance section. So I'll go to samples, and then I'll click on the K's, and I could actually load up one of the default sequences, but I decided to make something from scratch. I thought about using one of the sequences that's already I think Kick Bro 6 is one that I really like, and I'll place that here. So basically what I'm doing now is building up my drum kit. I'm actually going to use the snare from this UK dance as well, and I'm going to use I actually made another drum kit from this sample pack, so I know that Snare Bro 6 is excellent. Not really feeling Bro Snare 6 right now. Let's use Snare Bro 3. Okay, I got my MIDI all plugged in and loaded up, nice and crispy. Okay, let's continue to load more sounds. So, from scratch, you may want to think about some of the things that you want, or some of the elements that you want to include in your beat. Do you want drums? Definitely kick, snare, hi-hat. Those three elements are very important. Do I want a bass line? Do I want saxophone? Do I want piano? What type of elements do I want this beat? Do I want it to be fast, slow, um, mid tempo, double tempo? What do I want this beat to um, invoke? Do I want it to pull emotion from a person? Do I want to make them want to dance? Do I want to make them happy? Do I want to make them sad? As a maestro, the chords and notes that you choose can actually change the entire mood of a person. And so, you kind of want to think about, hey, do I want to make sniper music? Do I want to make music where somebody listen to this, they're sitting on like the 19th floor, picking people off with a sniper rifle? Um, and so that's kind of crazy, but it's something that you really want to think about before you even start making the beat. So once you figure out what type of mood you want to pull out of a person or put into a person, I don't know if you can put anything into a person, but once you figure out the mood of it, you can say, okay, this type of kick, snare, hi-hat that I want. Um, do I want vocals on it, and things of that nature? So I got my kick and my snare, and the next thing I want to do is pull in my bass. And this is not a set in stone way to make beats, but it's definitely a template that you can use to start with. Sometimes I start with a sample. I don't always start with drums. And I may even build my drum kit and then take a sample and then build from the sample and build the drums around the sample. And so it just really depends on what direction that I want to go into. And so when you're building an instrumental, keep in mind that your drums and your sample are the meat, and then you add all of your other little flurries, embellishments into the beat. And so I think I want to go with something like a trap type bass. And so I'm just kind of scrolling through my kits here to figure out what type of bass that I want to use. And so I have a lot of them. So I got this kit from the Akai site, and I should be able to pull an 808 out of this. That's a little on the high end. Do I want that? I'll pull it in anyway. And I'll let that sit tight for a moment's time. And I think I want to pull in a sample as well. So let's go back, and maybe I'll chop up some piano. Let's see what we got here. I actually haven't fully went through this piano pack. Okay, so I like piano too. So I'm gonna show you guys a sampling technique that I use inside of MPC Essentials. You could just take that sample and drag it onto the pads, but what I really want to do is create a stab kit from this sample. And so I'm gonna double click on it, or I'll go into the sample edit section here at the top. And what I'm gonna do is I'm going to create a new batch of samples from these transients or stabs here. So I'll go into the chop section, and I'm going to leave it on manual chop because I'm going to make these chops myself. Let's see here. I think my MPC Essentials may be a little too wide for my screen. Let me bring it in some. Okay. Alright, and I'm going to zoom in, of course, to really be able to see where my transients are. So that first stab will ultimately be the first stab. I'll wait for my cursor here. Oh yeah, I need to be at the top of the left side of the wave. And I'll stab here, and then I will actually, I don't want chop 1 to be on the second stab, so I'll take this first chop and then I'll just, okay, that's my cursor. I'll take this first chop and I'll drag it to chop 1, and then I'll bring in chop 2 somewhere in here, and I'll zoom in to make sure I'm nice and tight. And so when you're creating your own sample stabs, or I would say when I'm doing it, I make sure that my chops are really nice and tight so that when I hit the pad, I don't have any delay or any other ambient sounds that were recorded on the sample that I don't want to be on the beat. Because when I play a piano chord, I want that chord to sound off when I hit it. Okay, so I'll zoom in and check all my chops. Looks like I have 7 here, which is perfectly fine. I actually only need a couple. Okay, that's good. Nice. Alright, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to extract these samples. To a new program. I'm really not going to use the new program. I really just want the samples. And so I'm just going to set a irrelevant number of bars and say do it. That'll come into play when you're actually using the project program, but I'm creating my own program right now, and so I just need these sample chops that I just created. So on the left of the sample, there's a little sound wave. It turns to a speaker when you hover over it, and so you can audition your chops. Okay. All right. So, and that appears when you're in the all sample section. If I click on program 1, I'm only going to get the program 1 samples. When I click on program 2, I'm only going to get the program that I just created samples. But when I click on all samples, I can then take those samples and then place them in any program that I want. And so that'll be beneficial to you when you are creating your own drum kit for your beat. Okay, so I'm going to return to program 1 where I have my drums and everything located at. Double click, and I'm going to delete all of these events that I just created because I don't need them. And I have my kick snare, and I have a bass note that I'll be editing, and I'm actually going to drag this bass note down to another pad. I want him to be here. Nice. Okay, and I'm going to go into all samples, and I'm going to use my top layer of pads for the sample chops that I just made. So I'll go, this is the original, and so you can notice 1 through 7 are the samples that I just created. And I usually don't go in this order. I'm just doing this for the sake of the tutorial, making it very simple, plain and clear for you guys to understand. So we have a nice piano sample chop here. We have our drum kit, and we're ready to go. So let's check out those piano chops. Oh, wrong bank. Okay, so we have our piano set up, and we have our kick, snare, hi-hat set up. We can pull in our hi-hat. Actually, I mentioned the hi-hat. I haven't set up my hi-hat yet. I really want to tune my hi-hat to my piano, so let's decide what we want our piano to say. So I'm gonna give myself about 8 bars here. So we're setting the bars, and then we'll set the tempo afterwards. I thought I selected all of these. I didn't. Let's delete those. We're starting from scratch. On the bottom, the record and the overdub buttons. The record will overwrite something if you already have things recorded, but the overdub will add notes to what you have recorded. So whenever you hit record, you want to hit play from start, from the beginning, unless you're in the middle of a sequence. There's a couple different ways that you can record sequences. One is to just make this entire sequence 8 to 16 to 32 to however many bars you want in your song. You could actually notate an entire song in this section. I don't recommend that, but it is doable, if I can take the liberty to say doable. I usually start with about 8 or 16 bars, sometimes 4, and then I'll build from that. And so that's basically what I'm doing now. So we're making like a trap type beat. So I'm gonna go somewhere in between 125 and 130. I'm gonna say 128, and I'm gonna let the metronome play while I kind of listen to these pianos. so one thing about these pianos that I've noticed is that I've created this kit, and I need to set my pads up in a way that when I play a piano note, I want the note to only be sustained until I play another piano note. So what I'll do is I'll take these pads and then I'll place them into what you would call a mute group. And so here in the play pad modes, I'm going to select one on each pad. So I'll go to A9 where the first one is located. Now I'm in A10. I'll put him in mute group 1. And so basically I'll select all of these pads individually and I'll put them all in mute group 1 so that they will mute each other when one is played after the other. And so sometimes this is very time consuming when you have a sample chop, as well as you want to give your hi-hat, your closed hi-hat and your open hi-hat a cutoff, but it's definitely worth the time. Definitely worth the time. So I just take my time here and do this right. It takes a little bit of focus when you're behind the scenes in the program edit section, because when you're tweaking notes and adding parameters to your beat, you definitely want to make sure things are tight, because when you're editing semitones and fine semitones and things like that, just one increment off can make you wonder what's going on with your beat. Okay, let's see if my piano is cutting each other off my notes. That's what I want. So I got a nice little audition going here, and so I think I want to go something like that. So I'm going to hit stop, overdub, and then I'm going to play from the start. Okay. This note, I think, needs a little tweaking. So I'm just going to bring his barrier over just a little. So if you notice, when I pull too close to the transient, there's more of a click. It's a little fine click. I don't want that. Even though, you know, some days I may. Pops and clicks are real hip hop. At the same time, this piano has a really clean sound, so I want it to actually sound like somebody's playing it. And so I'll keep that. And then I'll go back to main mode. And so that's one thing that's dope about MPC Essentials. You can edit samples and re-edit them as you play. Alright, so we have a nice little piano loop here. I'm going to go into my mixer section because the piano is a little loud. And I may need to change that bass note as well. But each pad has its own mixer section. And so, or mixer channel. Each pad has its own channel. And so it's just really important to remember that if you turn down the level to a certain decimal mark, you want to make sure all of them have the same decimal mark on the VU meter. So I'm going to play this again. So that's negative 4.66 dB. So that snare has definitely driven me to go ahead and record it. Things are sounding great. Full level. I got my mini turned on full level, so my volumes won't vary. For some reason my first sample didn't play, so I'm gonna go back to overdub. Okay, now would be a really great time to go to File in MPC Essentials and save our project. Even though we're not done yet, sometimes programs crash, and if this were to crash where we are right now, we would totally lose what, a good 20 minutes worth of work, and so that would suck. So I'm going to save this as, what should I save this as? I'll save this as a piano riff, because it is a nice piano riff, and I want easy access to this, so I just jam it on my desktop, no problem, so you guys can see the actual file tree that it saves as later. So it's going to save my individual samples, and it's also going to save my project, and it'll also save my programs, a MIDI file, and all different types of things. There's a plethora of things that it saves. It saves recorded automation and all different types of things. Okay, so we have a nice little loop going here with our piano and our snare. So we want to add a bass and a kick and a hi-hat at some point. So let's take a look here. We got a snare, kick. Let's play. Make an attempt at go ahead and record my kick. I don't think I hit play from start. Let me make sure I didn't record any kick notes. I actually did record one. I'm gonna highlight him and delete. And I'm going to overdub and play start. A bad note that that I played that the quantize caught, and it drug it to the left because I was too far left. It drug it to the next 16th note. I have it on 16th notes here, so I just put that on the next 16th note, and so we have a kick going. So at this point I need to go and find myself a hi-hat. So I'll just pick a random folder and audition hi-hats. Actually, this one's not that bad, although it's I got my volume down a little low. Let me turn this up some. Yeah, that sounds like it was mastered a little low. I'm gonna do it a little low. I don't think I like these hats at all. Okay, let's go somewhere else. I could play in a hi-hat. Just play it. So I can use my note repeat. Change that pad to polyphonic. I changed that pad to a polyphonic sample because when it's mono, it's going to cut itself off. But when I change it to a polyphonic sample, you'll continue to hear the entire sample on one shot mode. Okay, so I think I like this hi-hat. I just need to find the right cadence for this particular beat. I use somewhat of like a dance kit. I use the UK dance kit. I'm kind of regretting that a little bit, because if I had used more of a trap beat type joint, which is okay, it's a hybrid, it doesn't really matter, but it has more of a dance feel to it than a trap, but it will have a trap type cadence to it. So we'll just say it's a hybrid trap dance beat, whatever. You know, when you're a producer, you can call it whatever you want. So let's try to find the right cadence for our hi-hat. So I have eighth note triplets on my mini. So in MPC Essentials, I wanted to be able to pick up those notes, so I'll go to eighth note triplets here, and I'm going to go ahead and try to record this. Not bad. Okay, so I accidentally recorded a note here, so I'm going to highlight him. We'll do a little editing. And I think I recorded a extra note here. I'm just going to check that and see. Okay, so that's pretty good. I actually want to add a couple more hi-hat notes, so I'll change my note repeat to 30 seconds maybe. And I'll audition that really quick. Let's record that. Wrong pad. it's actually good that I made this accident here. Played the wrong pad. So I'm going to drag a note and I'm going to delete a couple. This first note here I want. So I'm going to drag him down. And then these 3 notes I don't want. So I'm going to select, I'm going to slick. I'm going to click on the selection tool, highlight these 3 notes, and I'm going to delete. Very simple. Zoom back out, and I'm going to play from start, see how we sound. Turn down my bass note so it flows with the beat. And I actually want to create a new kit, or I should say X group of bass notes. And so I'll need at least 4 bass notes to play. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this bass note and I'm going to copy it onto 3 more pads. And then I'll go into the program edit section and I will change the tone of these notes, and that way I can play them as if they were on a keyboard scale. So I'm on pad 5, highlight, and I'm gonna tweak his tone. Sorry, I accidentally tweaked pad 5 and I was playing pad 6. Really quickly, just like we did the piano samples, we're going to go in the mixer and we're going to highlight. We're at negative 10.1 dB. So we're going to bring all of our other bass notes down to negative 10.1 dB. And we may bring that back up later. But as for right now, we're going to let these bass notes rest there. So I'll play all of them. They're all the same note, same tone. They're all playing the same note independently. And so let's go ahead and set up our X group. So the piano is in X group 1. We're going to highlight each one of these and put them in X group 2. And you can put them in X group 8 if you want. It doesn't matter. But as long as they're in the same mute group, it's fine. Totally fine. So we only have 4 to place in mute group 2. So that's not too strenuous on the body. Alright. Sometimes this drop down menu doesn't stay, but if you click and hold until it pops up and then you drag it to mute group 2, then it works out fine. So they're all in mute group 2. Now I'm going to scroll back over to my layer section and I'm going to change the semitones. I think I like that first one in A5 to stay but I need to tune this into the same scale that the piano's in. And I want a lower note. Note in mute group too. Okay, so if you were just paying attention, then you will notice that I used the semitone section to change the notes for each pad. And so it's the same note, but for pad 5, I kept the original tone of the sample. For pad 6, I tuned it down to -8 semitones. For pad 7, I tuned it up a positive 4 semitones. And for pad 8, I tuned it all the way up a nice 11 semitones. So we're all in the same scale of the piano. And so when we record, we can get a nice little bass line going. So we have a nice little melody and drum kit going. I'm gonna go ahead and record this bass line. Overdub, play from start. Big mistake. Good thing I made a mistake. I'm gonna hit Command Z and undo what I just did. I need to return my quantize or time correct to 16th notes. I was recording in triplets and that's never a good idea. I'm recording bass lines unless that's what you're going for. And let's try that again a little differently. So now we have a nice sequence going here. We have all of our bass notes. I'm going to go ahead and hit Command or Control Save. Control Save if you're using Windows. That's going to save my newer sample edits, and it's also going to save my overall file. And now that we have a nice little track, we can decide, hey, do I want to add something else? I think I want to add one more element. I think I want to add some type of vocal element to the track. I'm going to be a little thorough, not too thorough, but thorough enough so you guys get the idea. On pad 4, I want to add some type of vocal element. I don't know, maybe a scream or even a note that has a human element to it. And so let's see, I need some vocals. I like that sound, and so I may have to tune it but it definitely will fit into the grand scheme. It definitely will fit into the grand scheme of things. So I got that on pad 4. And I may need to tune this down. Let's see how it sounds in the scheme. Just gonna write this note in. I don't need to record and play this. So I'll click on my pencil tool, and it'll automatically write 16th notes since I have 16th notes in my time correct already. If it was 8th notes, it would be longer. Okay, and already in my head can hear a little delay or echo on this sample. So I'm gonna go to my mixer. And in my plugins, I'm going to pull up some type of echo, maybe like a tape echo. MPC Essentials has some really great VST effects. So I'm going to choose some type of delay. I would choose a multi-tap, but I just need something to sync with the time right now. So I'm going to select that. It'll pop up in my drop down, and I'll double click on him, and I'll get my, well, I thought I would get it. There it is. Sometime today. Okay, it keeps disappearing. Alright, so let me bring that front and center, and let's see what it sounds like so far. That's actually perfect. A little more feedback. Yeah, I definitely could hear like a Future on this track, rapping to a female. So yeah, we have a nice little sequence here. We got a nice little vocal element that we added. So the next step from creating your beat and your sequence or a MIDI edit section up here is, I'm actually in the mixer. I shouldn't be explaining this from the mixer section. Actually, let me explain one more section to you. Here in the program edit section, we have mixer type elements here where you can turn up the volume and turn it down and things like that, but don't get that confused with the actual mixer. Okay, and then I have a VST delay on this track. So if I click on another track here, there are no VSTs on this particular sample, but I do have it on my Vogue sample. So when I hit the Vogue sample, I have that delay, and so just want to give you guys an eye into that. Okay, so now that we have our sequence set up, we have our drum element, we have our piano element, we even have a vocal element, and all of our notes are sequenced out here in the note piano roll section. Now we need to focus on the sequence section. So we're on sequence 1 and we have program 1 in the programs. We're going to stay on program 1. So in sequence 1 we have all of these notes. Now I'm going to double click on sequence 2 and it should be blank. Now we still have the same pads loaded up in this particular program. We're still in program 1, but we have no notes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to sequence 1, and with the note selection tool I'm just going to click on any gray area and I'm going to copy every single note, and then I'm going to go to sequence 2. In sequence 2 I'm just going to select in the gray area where the kick is, and then I'm going to hit paste, and I'm going to paste the same notes. I'm going to make sure that I have 8 bars here, and I have to make sure that the sequence tempo is the same as the original. So now that everything is correct, we should be able to play the same sequence in, or the same beat in sequence 2. One thing I forgot to mention, here in the sequence section, you can also edit all of those parameters. So I'm going to click on the drop down menu and I'm going to make another sequence, sequence 3, same time signature, same loop section on. First bar will be bar 1. I'm going to drag this up, the last bar up to 9. Actually, it's not letting me drag the way that I want, so I'm just going to do it the easier way. Okay, time correct 16th notes, and we're not going to transpose anything. Same operation, I'm going to paste all of those same notes in this section. Play it just to make sure. Okay, we need to, that sounds a little slow, so we need to change our tempo. That will be 128. Enter. And let's create about 2 more. Okay. This time I'm going to go ahead and paste my notes. Drag the sequence up. Actually, no, I just want to type it in. Double click 128. Enter. Okay, and we're going to make sure that's 8 bars. And we'll play it for continuity. Okay, that sounds great. Let's give ourselves another good sequence, and we'll come and add another one later if we need to. So we have 5 sequences here. Let's paste those notes. Let's make this 128. And let's make sure we have 8 bars here. And this is one of the reasons why I like using 8 bars, because it just makes things a little simple for me here, because I know that these are all 8 bar sequences. And so if I multiply 1 by 5, I know I have exactly 40 bars here to work with. And so if I am sequencing a song, no matter where I put these bars, I can always multiply and double up. If I have 40 bars, I can add another 8-bar sequence and make it 48, and so on and so forth. So every song is somewhere between 100 and 120 bars, depending on the time signature. A song may be somewhere in between 3 to 5 minutes these days, sometimes longer depending on the artist. So this is a really great start to the beginning of sequencing a song. We have 5 sequences here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's go into the next sequence section here at the top. So here in the next sequence section, you can see that on the left hand side we have sequences 1 through 5 in this section, and what we can actually do is play these sequences in order and also cue them up as they play. And so as you can see, sequence 1 is flashing, and when I press play, that sequence begins to play. I'm going to click on the second sequence, and at the end of that sequence it's going to cue up the next sequence. So it's going to go to section 3 or sequence 3, and I'm going to go back to sequence 1 after this. So you basically get the gist of how the next sequence section works. That's actually really good if you have outboard equipment hooked to your MPC Essentials and your controller, and I don't know, a keyboard or an actual MPC or something, some sound module or something. You can audition everything here, and you can actually export or copy this sequence to the song section. Now I like to do the song section from scratch myself, but that may be something that you could do, and you could actually be playing something and suddenly go to the next sequence that you have highlighted, or you can just get it to continue to hold on the same sequence. So I'm going to briefly explain the song section, and then I'll show you how to work it. Okay, so we have end of song here. We haven't set up a beginning of song yet, so there's a couple ways that you can get started here. Click on insert step, and so it'll instantly give you a sequence 1. You can hit the drop down and go to any, you can start with any sequence that you want. Okay, I need to hold, click and hold. So you highlight the one that you want, which we want sequence 1. We can tell it how many times we want it to repeat, and we can even change the BPM here, and we can elongate the bars if we want, or shorten the bars. And so basically for continuity purposes, I'm not gonna mess with that. Alright, so sequence 1 is good. I'm gonna go ahead and delete that step because we're just getting started. So that's kind of how it works. Once you insert however many steps that you need, and then begin to manipulate which sequences that you want in these areas, you begin to build the song to its full potential. And once you get your final sequence in, and then you export. But there's a couple little quick tricks that I want to show you guys before I get too ahead of myself. Okay, so first thing we want to do is we want to go to sequence 1, and we're gonna treat sequence 1 as if it's our intro. Okay, so in the intro we probably don't want to have any drums. So what I'm gonna do is go to my selection tool, and I'm gonna highlight the snare and the kick. and I'm gonna take those out, and then I'm gonna audition what I'm listening to. So we're destructively editing the MIDI in sequence 1. The sequences 2 through 5 will still remain the same with the same notes. And so if I click on sequence 2, I will still have the same notes. So at sequence 1, I just took the snare and the hi-hat out. I'm sorry, the snare and the kick out. And I'm gonna audition it. I'm gonna also take out the hi-hat. What I'm actually doing right now is taking out the bass notes. I need to put my Vox note back in at the beginning. Okay, so what I've done is created somewhat of an intro. So if you take a look at the kick section, I've deleted all the notes in the snare section. I have a little bit of hi-hat to lead in to the chorus or the hook. I kept the vocals in, or the vocals in, the sound, and then I've deleted all the bass notes in the first 5 bars, and then 4 bars, and then the second 4 bars I have the bass kicking in under the piano. So the piano plays in the intro with the Vox sound, and then at measure 5 the bass and the Vox sound kick in, and then the hi-hat leads into the hook. So to give you a picture of what that sounds like, I'm going to go to the next sequence section and audition this, and I'm going to press play, and I'm going to lead into the chorus. I'm sorry, I was supposed to hit play from start. So I'm going to play the intro, and then I'll go into the hook or chorus. that vocal sample. So now that we have our hook basically solidified after the intro, we need to start working on the first verse. So sequence 1, let's double click on sequence 1. That'll definitely be our intro, and so you can kind of get an eye in to see what it actually means to make a sequence and then use that sequence to stack on top of another sequence like Legos, and then so on and so forth. So our third stacked Lego will be the verse, or the beginning of the first verse. You could have a singer on this, or you could have a rapper. It's pretty much double tempo trap. So what I want to do on the first verse is I definitely want to take all of the hi-hats out. And it looks like I just wrote a bunch of hi-hats in. Make sure you have your selection tool highlighted. So I'll select all of those hi-hats. And I think I'll take all of the drums out. Let me see how it sounds. I'm going to take all the drums out on the first verse, or the beginning of the first verse. And so if we go into our next sequence section, we'll hear how that leads in from the beginning. So we'll go to the first sequence, and then we'll play them in order. So we have the first the first 8 bars of the verse, and so now we need to come up with the second 8 bars. So we'll go back to the main section, main edit, main mode, and then we'll look. We have 2 more patterns that are the basic building blocks that we built. We have an intro, we have a chorus, which is the basic building block. Then we have our intro to the first verse. So now we need to build the second verse. Oh, I'm sorry, build the hook to the second verse. I'm sorry, not the hook to the second verse. We need to build the second half of the first verse. So we took the drum elements out of the first 8 bars. And so we'll bring the drum elements back in, and without the hi-hats, in I would say the first 4 bars. And let's take the vocal sample out. And just to see what it sounds like, let's take the bass notes out, and let's just play the piano with the drums. And so we'll go back to the next sequence section, which we could audition it there, but I want to see what things sounds like for continuity. All over my body, all over my body, all over my body. She all over my body, all over my body, all over my body. She all over my body. Looks like I have an extra measure somewhere in there, but it seems as if you guys will be getting the gist. So now that we have sequence 3, let me scroll over. Yeah, we have an extra bar there that messed up my my mumble flow. That's okay. So we'll go from sequence 3 into 4. So sequence 3 is here, and I'm going to, let's see, we got intro, chorus. That's the first 8 bars. In the second 8 bars probably wasn't a good idea, but you guys get the gist of what it's like to sequence and begin building your sequences and building your song. So I'm gonna start from scratch with the second half of that verse, and I'm gonna take the hi-hats and the vocal sample out again. Actually, I'm gonna just take the second vocal sample out. Scroll up just a little bit. Okay. Delete, and then that will take me back into the chorus. So I'm gonna go back to the next sequence section and play from start. The entire start. So I'll play the first verse back into the hook. Mama say mama santa mafusa. 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 I missed my cue. Okay, I'm gonna click on the third sequence into the first verse, and here's the lead in. Blah 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 blah. Mama say mama sa to mafusa. 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 So we have the basic intro, the basic chorus, the basic verse. And so what I'm going to do now is go into the song section. You can be as detailed with your sequences as you want to. You can put as many notes in, take as many notes out as you want. In the song section, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start to drag the sequential order of the way that I want my song to work. So I want to have the intro play one time. I want the first verse to play, the first hook to play one time. I want the first verse to play one time. So I'm plugging in each one of my sequences where I want them to go. Okay, so we have sequence 3, which is the beginning of the first verse. Sequence 4, which is the second half of the first verse. Okay, so we want to go back into the hook or the chorus, so we'll drag that back in. And so at this point we would have our other verses sequenced out. Okay, so I'm going to drag in the beginning of the first verse again, because this will be the second verse. Alright, and then I'll drag in 3 and 4. So 3 and 4 will be the beginning of a verse and the end of a verse. And so then I'll bring in the chorus again. So the sequential order so far is intro, chorus, first verse, chorus, second verse, chorus. So now I'm going to throw another verse in there. And you will probably have, I don't know, 16 sequences built up. Or maybe you'll have 4, I don't know. Or maybe you'll have 5. It really doesn't matter. So we have third verse. Let's say we'll bring the hook back in again. Three, 4, the hook. We'll bring the hook back in. We'll do the hook twice at the end. And so let's go back to main mode. And in sequence 5, we're going to use that as an outro. And in the outro, let's take the drums out again. And I'm being really basic here. You can be as detailed as you want with this. You can put your Dr. Dre signature at the end. You can scream out your producer name or have your baby name your production company. I don't know. But let's see what this sounds like as an outro. This sequence to about 10 bars. 11 is fine. And I'm gonna write in a quick clicked on my wrong tool. I'm going to write in one more vocal chant here. At the beginning of measure 9. So we have the vocal chant at the beginning of measure 9. I also took out the hi-hats in the second half. And I think I'm going to take out the piano and just have the bass line play. And I'm just experimenting. This is why we call it in the lab. We hope nothing blows up in our face when we mix the wrong components. Okay, so I'll go back to the play start. This is what our outro is going to sound and so that sounds decent. To add another bass note at the beginning of I want that bass note here. So let's write that note in. That's another thing to note too. Another thing to note is if you double click here in the timeline, at that point you can change the time signature, and so you can implement that. I don't see why a hip-hop producer would want to do that, but it's doable. So there's our song. We'll go back to song mode and we'll plug in our final sequence, sequence 5, at the end of the song. Sequence 5 goes here. That's our outro. Bada bing. And so we've created a song inside of MPC Essentials, or an instrumental, so to speak. And just for continuity, I'm gonna mumble a song. Mama say mama sa to my fusa. Mama say mama sa to my fusa. Okay, so that is the gist of how you would create the song. I noticed that in my pattern 3, I'm gonna go back to my original sequence. I'm gonna click on pattern 3, and you'll notice these little idiosyncrasies later. My hi-hat is way too loud, so I'm gonna go into my mixer, and I'm gonna bring the hi-hat down to the range that it's supposed to be at. Maybe it wasn't sequence 3. I think that it was. Let me go back. Okay, this is the sequence 1 is the intro. Sequence 2 is the hook. Okay, it's pattern number 4. So let me go into the regular sequence 2, and let me check what the decibel level was of the hi-hat. Okay, so it looks like I'm at negative 5.77. So I'm gonna go back to sequence 4 in the mixer, and I'm gonna bring that down to negative 577. It looks like it's already negative 577. I'm gonna play that. So what I think happened here is I have double notes written. So I'm going to zoom in here and do some surgery. And it's a good thing I made these mistakes, so you guys will be able to point them out when you make your own mistakes. So if I delete this note, there should be another note written under that. And so sometimes that happens when you're copying and pasting. You may copy something twice. So I'm gonna delete each one of these notes on top, because somehow, I don't know how, but the hi-hat was written twice on this particular sequence. So I'm just deleting the top note. And if there was no note written up top, when I hit delete, it would disappear. Sometimes that happens. It's a good thing that it happened in this video so you can catch it. Okay, so that should be normal volume now. Sure, I hit stop. Okay, so I'm gonna save everything where I am right now, just to make sure that I keep everything the way that it's supposed to be. And it's time to make an actual sorry about that blur, I had to reposition my essentials on the screen. Okay, so now it's time to actually make an instrumental. We have sequenced it out in song mode. Okay, so let me kind of like go over everything that we did, give you a synopsis. Let me sum everything up. Okay, we created a drum kit, we went to the mixer, and we tweaked our levels of everything. We also tuned our bass samples, and so in the future you guys can actually use that to tune all different types of samples. We retuned here. And we also created 2 X groups, one for the drums, and one for the bass, and another one for the piano, one for the bass and one for the piano samples. We went to the play sequence section, and then we auditioned our sequences as they appeared so that we would hear what they would sound like stacked in song mode. Then we began to remove elements and notes from different sequences to make them cohesive for verses and for the intro. So in the intro we took the drums out. In the first verse we took some more things out, the drums and the bass out. And then in the second half of the first verse we brought the bass back in and we did different elements. And so once we did that in our different sequences and made our outro, then we went back to song mode, and then we put those sequences in sequential order here. And I wanted to note here in the final 2 chorus sequences, instead of dragging this over twice, what I could have done was just when I put this sequence in one time, I could have just dragged the 1 up and made this 2, and so the hook would, this particular sequence would play twice. And so that's pretty much how you would sequence the song. So we did all of those things, and we have the song is in order and ready to be written. And so what we would do at this point is we would go to the file section, and we would go to export, and we would go to as audio mix down. Now MPC Essentials is not like a DAW. It only gives you 2 tracks to mix down to. So you can mix down to WAV or an AIFF file. You can't mix down to MP3. And so basically you would need to convert this to an MP3 if you needed to later. Basically the start bar would be from here, and your song is about 110 bars. You do want to give it an audio tail. I'm gonna give this an audio tail of about, I don't know, 5 seconds, because we have that echo. It may need to be longer, I don't know. It's however long that is. And 16-bit, most computers can handle that. CD quality is 16-bit, 44.1 kilohertz. If your computer can stand it, I would say do 96, so you can capture all of the richness of the sound. But for the sake of continuity, I'll just leave it where it is. Okay, once we've chosen our parameters I'm going to click on export, and it'll give me a file save option. I'm going to save this as piano riff right on the desktop with the other files, and then you guys will get a chance to look at those. So it's exporting the entire song as a wave, and it's going through those sequences and writing those MIDI notes as audio, or it's taking those samples in conjunction with the MIDI notes and writing them as audio and rendering them as a song or an instrumental. Okay, so now that we have that done, I need to go to my desktop view. Okay, so here's my desktop view. As you can see, I have my project folders or project folder data written here. I have the MPC Essentials file written here, and I also have my piano riff beat wave written here. So inside of the project folder, you can see I have all of my samples saved from the particular project. There's a program information here. There is sequence information here, and there's also a MIDI file written. And so you could then take these files and put them into another MPC, or maybe MPC Studio, or into another sequencer. There's all different types of options that you have where you can just archive them and then have them for later. Okay. And so I usually take my program and then I save it inside of the project data folder. So inside of MPC Essentials, you do have some mastering tools. You have compression that you can put on the master track. You have some gang of EQs and all different types of things. And so in order to get the track where it's banging, you will need some more treatments, and that may be another video. But just for a raw pre-production sound, and I would say that this is good enough to take to an MC or a singer to at least get the ball rolling. Let's see what it sounds like. Open this up on my iTunes. Okay, so you basically get the gist. That's what it sounds like. Um, you would then take this and you could send it to a mastering house, send it to an artist. You could treat it some more, give it a wider sound with some more plugins in your DAW or in your wave editor. You would then convert this to an MP3, or like some online stores, online beat stores, you can just upload it just like this, put your price on it, and then email the link to prospective artists or labels or whoever you want to send your beat to. So, I'm Luuh. This has been another banging tutorial. Like, man, this came out a lot better than I envisioned it. And so, yeah, hopefully this helped you out in some way. Again, thanks for investing in your own craft. And I'll keep making these videos so that you guys can make it to your next level. This is actually really some next level production. This is where you go from being a hobbyist to actually making money from your craft. And so whatever amount of money that you spent on your, I don't know, this comes with your MPK Mini, your MPK, or your MPD, whatever piece of equipment that you bought to get this program. This is where it starts to pay for itself and earn back. And yeah, you definitely made a good choice in purchasing this video. And so definitely give a thumbs up, like, definitely subscribe, and I appreciate it. I'll catch you guys on the next one. And yeah, two fingers. Peace.